Let's just jump straight into this explainer today because we're going to unpack a pretty fascinating paradox. Think about it. We all have the exact same 24 hours in a day, right? Yet some people seem to achieve this monumental, landscape-shifting success, while the rest of us often feel like we're just stuck running on a treadmill, trying desperately to keep up. That feeling of chronic overwhelm, of being constantly on but never actually getting ahead, yeah, that is one of the most defining stress points of our modern working lives. It drains our creativity, it spikes our anxiety, and honestly, it just leaves us feeling perpetually behind. So today, we're unpacking exactly why the most highly successful people out there fiercely guard their schedules and how you can adopt their exact frameworks to hop off that treadmill once and for all. And it really all starts with this bold truth. Your attention is your most valuable resource. Seriously, it's not your money, it's not your network, and it's not even just your physical time on the clock. It's entirely about managing your mind. When you start treating your attention like an exclusive VIP lounge rather than a public park, everything about how you work completely shifts. Think of a public park. It's open to anyone, right? People can just walk in, make a ton of noise, leave trash, and disrupt your peace whenever they feel like it. But a VIP lounge, that has a bouncer. It has a strict guest list. You actually have to actively decide who and what gets past that velvet rope of your attention. Once you start operating with that level of exclusivity, you stop just reacting to everyone else's emergencies and finally start proactively building your own vision. To figure out how high performers optimize their routines, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. The value of attention, 2. The psychology of productivity, 3. Depleting your mental bandwidth, 4. The decision fatigue trap, 5. Building fierce boundaries, and finally 6. Mastering true focus. All right, let's get into section 1, the value of attention and why you need to protect both your time and your energy. See, scheduling is actually a critical form of cognitive resource management. There's this super common and honestly really dangerous misconception out there that being productive just means cramming every single hour of your calendar with tasks. But true high performance requires a dual shield. Yes, you have to protect your time, absolutely, but you also have to aggressively protect your energy. You aren't just blocking out squares on a calendar. You are literally budgeting your brain power. Highly successful people aren't just asking themselves, do I have a free hour at 3 p.m.? Instead, they're asking, will I actually have the creative energy required to tackle this complex strategy document at 3 p.m.? Or, should I protect my peak morning hours for this instead? They budget their energy with the exact same rigor that a CFO uses to budget capital. Moving right along to section 2, the psychology of productivity, which is essentially the invisible drain on your mind. Productivity is deeply, fundamentally psychological. It's all about how your cognitive resources, your focus, and your mental energy determine your true output, not just the raw amount of time you spend sitting in an office chair. And I think this perfectly validates that crushing feeling of overwhelm you get when your attention is drained. We've all had those days, right? Where you stare at a glowing screen for an hour, your fingers just hovering over the keyboard, and you accomplish absolutely nothing. You weren't lacking time, and you probably weren't lacking the skill to do the work. What you lacked was cognitive juice. Your brain was just tapped out. So acknowledging that your productivity is governed by your psychological state rather than a ticking clock is really the first major paradigm shift you need to reclaim your day. Which brings us to section 3, depleting your mental bandwidth. Or, as I like to think of it, your brain's RAM. So mental bandwidth is basically your brain's finite capacity to process information, maintain focus, and make decisions at any given moment. Think of it exactly like the RAM in your laptop or your smartphone. Your brain has incredible storage for long-term memories, kind of like a massive hard drive, but its working memory, its RAM, is incredibly limited. If you have 50 browser tabs open while you're rendering a 4K video and downloading a massive file all at once, what happens to your computer? You get that dreaded spinning wheel of death. The whole system slows to a total crawl, the fans are whirring like crazy, and even simple things take forever. Well, your brain functions the exact same way. When it gets overloaded with microtasks, unresolved worries, and just a constant flood of incoming data, you experience the human equivalent of this spinning wheel of death. We call it brain fog. When you're operating at full bandwidth, you get incredibly sharp focus and highly efficient processing. You're completely in that flow state, effortlessly connecting complex ideas. But contrast that with cognitive overload, which just brings sluggish thinking, frequent errors, and a total loss of focus. This night and day difference is exactly why highly successful people absolutely refuse to let random emails or push notifications hijack their mental RAM. Every single time your phone buzzes, even if you don't actually pick it up to answer it, your brain has to allocate a tiny fraction of its RAM just to process that interruption and decide to ignore it. Do that 100 times a day, and you've effectively drained your cognitive battery before you've even started the real work. Now let's dive into Section 4, the decision fatigue trap, and look at the real cost of choosing. I really want you to think about this question in the context of your own daily life, specifically those notorious afternoon slumps. Why is it so incredibly easy to boldly choose a healthy salad at noon, but by 7 p.m. you're on the couch, speed dialing for a greasy extra cheese pizza? Well, it's not some sudden mysterious failure of willpower. It's actually a very real biological depletion of your decision-making reserves. Every single choice you make, what to eat for breakfast, how to word an email to an annoying coworker, how to prioritize a project, all of it costs a measurable amount of glucose and mental energy. The well literally just runs dry. Chronologically, your cognitive energy just drains from morning to evening. In step 1, the morning, you're at peak mental bandwidth. You're fresh, your RAM is totally clear, and your choices are super sharp. Then in step 2, midday, you face this gradual depletion as all those little micro decisions stack up. And finally, by step 3 in the evening, you just hit a wall of decision exhaustion. This chronological reality is exactly why top performers absolutely refuse to waste their early hours on trivial choices. It's why iconic leaders are so famous for standardizing their wardrobes. Think of Steve Jobs and his classic black turtlenecks, or Barack Obama saying he only ever wore gray or blue suits. They weren't trying to make a fashion statement at all. They were actively stripping away low-level decisions from their mornings so they could hoard their peak cognitive energy for decisions that actually moved the needle. So, how do we protect ourselves? That brings us to Section 5, building fierce boundaries to shield your resources. To successfully shield that mental bandwidth, you have to implement a toolkit of empowering boundaries. We're talking about establishing clear work hours, aggressively saying no to non-essential requests, limiting digital interruptions, and fiercely protecting focused time blocks. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Saying no is incredibly uncomfortable. It can feel like you're letting people down, missing an opportunity, or just, being difficult. But saying no isn't about being unkind. It's about being profoundly effective. Because every single time you say yes to a trivial distraction or an aimless meeting, you are voluntarily handing over a slice of your mental bandwidth. You're letting someone else spend your brain's RAM. Building these fierce boundaries is how you finally take back the mouse and keyboard to your own mind. Which leads us perfectly into Section 6, mastering true focus and reclaiming your attention once and for all. Because true focus is the direct result of guarded time and protected mental bandwidth. This is where all of that uncomfortable boundary setting actually pays off. We tend to treat focus like it's this elusive, mystical state we can magically summon out of thin air just by throwing on a lo-fi playlist or downing 3 shots of espresso. But that's a complete myth. Focus is not something you force. It is a natural, guaranteed byproduct of stopping decision fatigue and protecting your mental RAM. When you finally clear out the cognitive clutter, close those unnecessary background tabs, and put up that velvet rope around your attention, your focus naturally skyrockets. The clarity you've been searching for was there all along. It was just buried underneath a pile of unprotected distractions. So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. If attention truly is your most valuable resource, what will you stop spending it on today? I challenge you to really audit where your brain's RAM is going right now. Take a look at your calendar for tomorrow. Find just one meeting you can decline, one block of time you can fiercely protect, and one trivial decision you can completely automate. Reclaim your most precious asset, build those fierce boundaries, and just watch what happens to your productivity and, more importantly, your peace of mind. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope you go out and start protecting your VIP lounge today.